I'm rewatching Outlander from the beginning. Let's talk about episode 5 titled Rent. As always, this will have spoilers for the books and the TV shows, so if you are looking to avoid those, please do keep on scrolling. So episode 5 of season 1 titled Rent is one of my favorite episodes because it achieves so many great cinematic and storytelling beats in a very subtle but effective way. And this is true in both the book medium and in the show adaptation. They both tackle it differently, but the themes are still very much the same. At the heart of this episode, Claire is joining Dougal and his men as they go out to collect rents from the tenants of Castle Leoch. And she actually gets to see a side of these men and understand the dynamics of the clan matters in a very tangible way on this journey. She also, of course, grows closer to Jamie and we see their relationship progress. But I think the most important thing that this episode does for both Claire and us as viewers is draw a very clear parallel to broader themes of the storyline. The first of which is Dougal's authority over his men and the power that he holds over them. He is pretty central to this episode as he is the one going out and collecting the rents, but he also is using Jamie's scars as a propaganda tool, and this is the first time that we as viewers and readers in the story are learning about him using those funds in a way that Colum is unaware of, and that is to fund the Jacobite cause. Now, the collection of rents, especially having fallen on Dougal and not Colum, they're representative of the allegiance that he has, of course, to the Jacobite cause, but they also serve as a way of symbolizing the relationship between the tenants and the Highlanders, the lairds of the castle, and also Dougal's control over the money and to a certain extent the people, because he is the one that is forward facing in this situation, and it's foreshadowing to a greater political stake that we will see later in the season. Claire, of course, does not understand those broader themes as an outsider that she is, and so when she questions Jamie's allegiance to his uncle, especially when he is using him as a tool in the way that he has been throughout the episode, I think Claire is learning piece by piece again with Jamie as her bridge to this world how strong the family ties are and the allegiances they hold, and also what people are willing to overlook in the face of someone like Dougal coming in with so much power and authority and not being willing to challenge it. This is something I think in the book we have a greater understanding of her feelings towards that because she just went through the same thing with the war that she fought in her own time and how difficult it is for her to wrap her head around people turning a blind eye to someone doing the wrong thing and not stopping him. Similarly, that is the other parallel that this episode draws really well, which is that the themes of identity and belonging somewhere are very strong here. Claire still very much feels like an outsider in this episode. She has entire scenes where in the books we can hear her feeling very excluded because they are choosing to speak in the Gaelic, knowing that she does not understand the language. I would say that the books give her a lot more internal dialogue about this, but the show does a good job of showing, not telling us this, especially when she's observing the clan dynamics and doesn't fully understand them. There's also great storytelling references to showcase Claire's isolation from the rest of the group, with her clothing being different, with her body language, showing all her interactions with these people being uncomfortable for her and visualizing that discomfort. And the more subtle parallel that I really like being drawn here, and something that's not forthright when you're watching it, is her struggle to find a place where she belongs mirrors that of Scotland and themselves trying to maintain their identity and find their identity under British rule. Dougal using Jamie's scars as the rallying cry to get his men on board with the Jacobite cause is another great example of this. His scars are a symbolism of British oppression. He has to live with them every day, and for Dougal to manipulate that, it raises a bunch of ethical questions within Claire, of course, because Jamie's pain is being showcased and used as a political tool, but it also shows her again how war exploits and personal suffering are used for a greater cause, and that's something I think in some respects she can understand and find common ground with him on. And the overarching theme of this episode for Claire is that her initial judgments of these men and the Highland customs, it softens over time as she learns more about their culture and comes to appreciate their reasoning behind doing so many of the things that she's questioned up until this point. They do a good job at the beginning of the episode highlighting Claire's disgust with the drinking and the rent collecting and her assumptions about why they're doing things. But then they also show her the realities that these men have lived with for quite some time, arguably their whole lives, and especially under British rule, and things that Claire is ignorant to at this point, does not have a broad understanding of. And both Jamie and these men in this episode are able to show her that with a very grim reality that I think she needed in order to feel real, true empathy and sympathy for them. Claire is modern. She is from a different time. And so her perspective is one that is modern. And so her gradual shift in thinking mirrors how history is often seen through such personal biases. I think that's a really deep sort of underlining theme throughout this episode that is very important, especially in this historical context where Claire does have recollections of what happens to these people. She, by the end of the episode, feels really terrible knowing that she's watching these men and seeing them in a different light, not as criminals or rebels, but as men who are on the losing side of history, something that they believe so strongly in is not going to become a reality. It won't materialize. And she can't tell them that. They were so proud and passionate and, so proud to be Scottish. And it makes it very difficult for her to watch them and observe them and eventually fall in love with these people and their culture, knowing how it ends. We see flashbacks in this episode with her and Frank and the Reverend doing research, her learning about the Jacobites. She also refers back to her Uncle Lamb in this episode as well. And so that all comes back to her when she's with these men, learning about what they're doing and what they're fighting for. And that puts her in a very precarious situation, but it also, for us as viewers, makes us sympathize with both parties. We understand how hard that must be for Claire, and we feel what she feels towards these men that we have now, over the course of 5 episodes, come to know quite well and in many ways like and enjoy. For her to have flashbacks of seeing the battlefield of Culloden and knowing that so many of them will die at that battle, I can't imagine. I've traveled to Culloden. It is a beautiful, beautiful place. It's very harrowing. If you are ever in Scotland, be sure to make the trip up there. It is well worth the drive. It's a beautiful memorial for the events that took place on that battlefield, and also to conceptualize where this played out is, I found, really impactful too. When you know in the books that Frank put a fake headstone up for Jamie and tricked Claire, I think that also, hindsight's 2020, adds a layer of nuance to this episode that just makes it sting that little bit more. I also love this episode in terms of building more of that rapport and drama and banter between Claire and Jamie. There's so many little nuggets of that throughout this episode where their body language indicates again that there is a romance starting to blossom and bloom there. Again, we don't get so much of this in the books. We're only in Claire's point of view, and so to see them share these little smiles, expand upon small inside jokes that they share with one another, but I think most importantly, watch Jamie observing Claire in such a look of adoration is very important for progressing their individual storylines as a potential couple. My favorite scene, of course, is the beautiful adaptation of him sleeping outside of her door, which is different from how it plays out in the books, and I think is an improvement upon how this scene plays out in the books. There's a lot more emotion in this one. But we again see how Jamie is a kind, considerate person to Claire and really makes an effort to right her when she's wrong and teach her the ways of their thinking and methods and customs so that she isn't an outsider amongst them. But even though she does do things that are, not proper in that time, I also love that Jamie finds her very funny and amusing and appreciates how witty she is, how quick she is to say and speak her mind, and all of those little moments shared between them, again, compound over time and make the end of this episode between them feel very significant. Not to mention, it's beautifully shot. I love the color grading. It's just a great overall episode. I will do deep dives into specific moments later on, but this was definitely a great rewatch for me.